Well, I am here with a very, very good friend, a mentor for, wow, close to 20 years, Dr. Arlene Taylor. She is a brain function specialist. She's been I have learned so much about the brain that I've incorporated into everything I've done in the business world and coaching and speaking. So I am just excited to have you here and have us be able to talk about a subject that I think is so relevant to all of us, the brain. Your favorite subject, I know.
My favorite subject. But do we have to talk about years?
Years? I said we're kind of giving away when I say that. Well, I want to get right into talking about this because it is so powerful. Okay, you are widely known and respected worldwide in terms of being a brain function specialist. How did you get started in that field?
It's really interesting, Brenda, because I can never remember a time that I was not interested in the brain. In fact, my mother tells me that when I was 5, she found me in my father's study with the library of books, down on the floor, poring over it was like a physiology book, and I was looking at the brain. And I was so excited, I came running out and said, Mom, look, I've got one of these. And the next time I went back to find the book, it was not there. And I asked my mother where the book was, and she gave me this non-committal, reply. Years later, she told me she took the book away because there were pictures of naked people in the book. And she didn't want me to see those when I was 5.
Yes, I understand.
But it sort of started from there, and I started making presentations on the brain to youth groups and things like that, probably about the time I was 15, with what we knew about the brain then, because I was just passionate about it. But it really got jump-started, if you will, into the rocket age when we got the brain imaging equipment. And that's been somewhere, probably 25 years ago, we really began to get going with positron emission tomography, PET scans. And since then, I just wake up every day wanting to know what I'm going to learn next and how I can help people get that in a very practical way. People who don't have a physiology, neurology background of any kind, the brain research is complicated, as with many other types of research. So I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to understand this stuff. And take a piece of it and implement it in your life and make yourself more successful. So that's my goal, to take the research to the best of my ability, translate it in a way that's easily understood, so people can walk out of any of my presentations, take a piece, implement it, and watch their lives get better.
That's amazing. And I see, having been in personal development for 30 years, I have seen lots of things come and go and change and up and down. But what you have been teaching has been so solid and so consistent, so practical. I mean, I have applied it, and in every key area, what we're talking about here has effects in your spiritual life, your financial life, your relational life. There isn't any area of your life that isn't touched, obviously, with the brain. It affects every single area. So I can't think of a more important topic to be talking about and addressing, and I've seen how relevant it is in my life and in every single area.
Well, everything starts and ends in the brain.
Yeah.
Believe me, it does.
Yeah.
And so this is my brain's opinion, which of course is all any brain has, regardless of what anybody tells you. So my brain's opinion is that the more you understand about the brain in general, and the more you can understand about your brain in particular, you can start living your life by design. As I say on my home page, most people literally go through life flying by the seat of their pants, so to speak. And sometimes they get it right, but they're not sure what they did to get it right, so they can't replicate it.
Yeah.
And often they get it wrong, and there will be some other brain only too happy to tell them what they did that was wrong. But that may be irrelevant to their brain. And so not clearly understanding that, they don't know how to course correct.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing about, and I only know a little bit about the brain, Brenda.
We all do.
But the more I learn, the more that allows me to live my life by design, getting it right more often than getting it wrong,
Yeah.
and thrive.
Yeah, and that's the key word. I like to say building by design and not by default. And so
Exactly.
truly thriving, not just surviving. That's amazing. Well, you mentioned with the PET scan and that coming out, and one of the things that I know became very clear as a result of the PET scan is that we have an innate preference. We have an innate energy advantage. And that's something I haven't seen talked about anywhere else. It is just powerful to understand. Would you elaborate on that?
Well, the fact that, well, first of all, let's just do a little teeny basic bit about the brain and its functional layers, if you will. And that goes back, well, first of all, think of your wrist as the first layer of the brain. That will be the brain stem and the cerebellum. And of course, that hooks to your spinal cord, which goes all the way down your back. Then make this hand into a fist. That's the second layer, or the second gear, if you're talking about gears, automatic transmission. And both of these first two layers are subconscious. It's important to understand that. Now, if you put your other hand over the top, that becomes the third layer. This is called the cerebrum, the gray matter, the cortex, lots of names for it. This is the part where we have some conscious thought. Now, just lift off this part in your mind. All you've got here is third gear now. And imagine that my face is a clock. So we have 12, 6, 9, 3. 2 lines, 4 chunks of cerebral tissue. This is not theoretical, it is real. And it goes back as far as we know to at least Galen and Hippocrates,
Wow.
who basically taught that if you want to look at the general population and find some way to categorize it, you can lump it into 4 general categories. And of course, back then, they didn't have the physiology, and they said that's because we have different humors. Well, that piece hasn't proven out.
That's the melancholic, phlegmatic, that one, that
Exactly.
direction. Okay.
But we do have 4 chunks of tissue that are divided by a large division. Well, your brain is about the size of your 2 fists, connected by several bridges. So, when you do PET scan studies, and Dr. Richard Hayer in Southern California has done some of these, I really hate to ever use the words never and always with brain function, because there's always an outlier. But in general, we believe that when you come out the chute, your brain has an energy advantage in one of these 4 chunks over the other. And if you can identify that and match the majority of your life's activities to what your brain does energy efficiently, it's a duh. You know, you're using less energy. It will last longer. It goes back to Hans Selye. We're born with an energy bank. You can take it out a little bit at a time, or you can take it out a lot at a time. And depending which one you use is going to depend how long it lasts. Now, having said that, if you want the physiology appears to be that when you are using, well, think of your brain as an orchestra, but you got 4 conductors. And at any one time, if this part of the brain, that conductor is orchestrating things, you get a slightly different sound, if you want to use that metaphor, than when the other conductors are working. So that when you are thinking with your lead mode, which for me happens to be behind my right eye in case anyone's interested, when you are using that part of the brain, you know that the neurons don't touch each other. There's a gap between the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of another. So that little space I think of as Hong Kong Harbor. And you've got to get the information across Hong Kong Harbor. And sometimes it's pretty congested. But in your lead quadrant, there is a reduced resistance to the transmission of information across that gap, which means it happens much more energy efficiently. So of course, you can think more easily and you're not so tired when you're done. So the other research is that you can develop skills in any chunk, and we all do. I mean, I got here on time today. There's no time in the part of the brain where I have an energy advantage. So we continually use other parts of the brain. But where you spend most of your time is where you are looking at this bulk of the energy. So researchers have said that if you build most of your skills in a chunk where you don't have this energy advantage, which is huge. You know, using a monetary metaphor, since we're going to be talking some about money, when you're working in your area of preference, consider you're spending about $1 per second. Anywhere else in the brain, it's $100 per second.
That's amazing.
And we don't think right now that there's any intermediate. So, if you build the bulk of your skills and learn to do them well, in a part of the brain where you have no energy advantage, your energy is not going to last as long, and generally you will not be successful as you would otherwise, and you will be able to attain a good solid average level of competence. But if you build your skills, if you align what you do in life with your energy advantage, researchers believe this allows you to become exponentially competent in your field. And when you look around the world and you see people that you think are just brilliant in their field, the high probability is that they're doing something that matches their energy advantage. Of course, you love it.
Yes.
Because you're not so exhausted at the end of a given period of time. You could keep doing it more instead of, oh, so glad that's over with. When do I have to do that again?
Yes.
So this gets to be really practical. And so far, the research appears to be quite consistent. Now, 25 years from now, we're going to have more sophisticated brain imaging equipment. But this chunking of brain tissue goes back so far and seems to be so impactful that I think we'll just refine it.
And you know, it's amazing because your brain knows what's best for you, and when it's using that much energy and not in your innate gifting, not the way you were created by God to function. And I believe that's all tied together. Our spiritual call and being together with what our innate gifting, it all flows. And I've had people say to me, well, Brenda, how do you feel when you're speaking? How do you feel when you're teaching, when you're coaching? Like the wind is underneath my wings. I have endless energy. I'm not tired. I could do it for days and days and leave with a smile and love it. On the other hand, when we're not operating in there, you get fatigue, you get procrastination is a big one. I have had clients that are just brilliant and talented and have mastered whatever the skill it is that they're doing, and they can't overcome procrastination. And I'll have them take the BTS, the test, because I just knew that I knew that the one really current one that I just did couldn't overcome procrastination. Sure enough, operating just on the opposite, the most energy intensive, of course the brain is going to say, I don't want to do this. Please don't make me do this. And so you see procrastination, but it goes much further. You see immune system function going down. You see aging. I mean, this is serious. We're talking about your life, your health. This is a serious topic beyond both just feeling good and being able to be successful. It's something we're really talking about our entire physical, spiritual being tied in with that.
I like that you brought up procrastination, because people often say to me, I don't understand the procrastination bit. You know, I've decided I'm going to do this. I'm working hard. How come when I'm supposed to be doing something, I find 500 things to do? And I go, well, the brain can only get your attention in so many ways.
Get you sick, or
it will get your attention when you aren't aligned with what it knows is energy efficient, because it wants to be efficient. One of the first symptoms is irritability. You start getting irritable, and you don't know the reason you're getting irritable, and your brain is going, come on, this is way too much energy. You'll get hungry. Many people snack and snack and snack because the brain is saying, I'm out of energy. You know, the brain only maintains enough glucose for about 10 minutes of thinking at a time. So if you're really spending a lot of energy, it starts to push people to get hungry, so they eat. Often it's high-fat, high-calorie food, doesn't do anything much for their brain, does a lot for their waist. And then if you still don't get it, then it pushes you to procrastinate. Oh, you need to do this before you do that, because it's wanting to go with the energy efficient stuff. And if you do this year after year after year, then you can come to the place where you get immune system suppression, you get ill, you just can't sleep, you get exhausted, and for every period of exhaustion you'll have a period of depression, and so now you get into this, fatigue, depression loop, and it's just so unfortunate.
And also I think it can come to a full-on crash.
Oh, I think that's
for many people. I think that we're seeing a whole bunch of people that just now have just hit crashing point.
I think it's a major cause of burnout, personally. I really do. I have done research for years on people who have serious autoimmune diseases, serious addictive behaviors, and the only assessment I happen to use is the Benzinger Thinking Styles assessment. It's not perfect. It's not the only assessment. You can learn almost anything from any assessment if you know what it's trying to, factor for.
Sure.
But I use that assessment because it's been updated with some of the brain function information. So I'll give them the BTSA to see if we can identify them, jumpstart them in identifying where is your energy advantage. And I don't think I have ever had a client, that was really in trouble in terms of exhaustion and depression and autoimmune diseases and so on, that was living their lives aligned with their brain lead.
I was amazed reading Dr. Benzinger's book, Thriving in Mind, and the description she uses, she says when you're not in your innate gifting, in your innate energy advantage, your brain is actually, it shows on the PET scan, running hot. And she says you're literally frying your brain.
Think of it as an inflammation.
As an inflammation. Now, you have coined a term based on the research and what you've seen of seeing this over so many tests, so many individuals. You're seeing both the written data in the tests and the individuals. And you've coined something called PASS, P-A-S-S. Tell us a little bit about that. That is, to me, that is amazing and summarizes what we're just saying here.
Well, PASS stands for Prolonged Adaptation Stress Syndrome. And over the years, as I was making brain presentations and interviewing clients and so on, a number of them would come to me and say, I'm here to do the brain program, which is a program I do where we talk about this information, try to help people identify their giftedness in the key brain areas, which would be, of course, sensory preference, auditory, kinesthetic, or visual, whether you're an extrovert, an ambivert, or introvert, and then where you have your brain advantage, energy advantage in the cerebrum. And they would say, I thought I was having post-traumatic stress disorder. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, no, yeah, you're stressed, but you don't have PTSD, because two key characteristics are absent in your life, and that is an identifiable event. You haven't been to Afghanistan, you haven't been raped, you haven't, been abandoned on the side of the road, and you have no flashbacks. You have no flashbacks of memory because you don't have an identified event to come back in memory and
so all the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder without that key event and the flashbacks.
So I started looking at this and began really seriously evaluating people who came through the program. What are your characteristics? What are your symptoms? What is your history? And gradually identified 8 key symptoms that I was seeing over and over and over again in people who thought they had PTSD but didn't have those 2 characteristics. So then I made a trip back to hang out with Dr. Benzinger for a while and say, this is what I'm seeing. Tell me how this correlates with what you see. And we agreed that it was an explanation, especially for really serious overweight problems, serious addictive problems, serious autoimmune disease problems. And so I was struggling to come up with, what are we going to call this? And I don't know, one night I woke up hearing that phrase, do not pass go, and I said, PASS. Okay, that's it, Prolonged Adaptation Stress Syndrome. So it is a way to help people, and I give them an assessment for that when they come into the program, and they check off how many of these symptoms they have in their lives. Not everybody has all 8, but the people who are the most seriously involved in the suppressed immune system, fatigue, depression, all of that stuff, usually had at least 6.
Yeah.
And they may have them in different amounts. But when you can give something to somebody and say, look, you have 6 of these symptoms, look at how your life is working. All right, now let's look at your brain lead. Oh my goodness, you've built your least number of skills in the part of the brain it looks like has your energy advantage. No wonder. What that does is help them realize they're not crazy.
Yeah.
That there is a solution. And here's the bigger piece, Brenda, I think. In our culture, we so emphasize left brain function.
Yeah, the whole school system
That's-
is built on that.
Studies show that
Mhm.
80% of adults, especially males, build their skills in the left hemisphere, regardless of where their innate
And well, it's what
giftedness is.
society expects the male to do.
And that's where you get your rewards.
And so then you get a creative, maybe frontal right child, and
You're pushed to
you've
the-
got pushed to.
And there's so many other variables. For example, if you're an eldest child,
Yeah.
if you're an only child, if you are eldest of your gender,
Yeah.
you are pushed to the
And the
basal
culture.
left
The culture.
in adolescence
Yeah.
and to the frontal left in adulthood.
Well, being married to a Korean and the whole culture, for the survival of the culture, they had to go into technology. So it didn't matter what your innate gifting was. You should go into technology, my husband included, and just, go that direction. It's just forced in the entire culture.
And when you have a lot of energy,
Mm-hmm.
you can do this for a while.
Right, right.
But we lose energy every year in terms of brain function. And I keep thinking of my bank and how much I have. Now, Hans Selye said, we have an energy bank, and that was before he had any idea about PET scans or anything. He said, we have an energy bank. You can take it out slowly or quickly. And when you're out,
You're out.
you're out.
Wow.
Now, my brain has a slightly different opinion. If you understand how your brain works most efficiently and you start aligning yourself to this, and the research is 51% will do it. We're not talking 100% here.
Yeah.
I think I've put energy back in my bank.
Yeah.
Or I'm taking it out at such a small amount that it feels like I've put it back.
Nice. Me too.
So I don't know which it is. I'll take it either way.
Me too. Me too. And I have seen this and applied it in my own life so many, many ways. As you know, I home educated all 3 of my children. And what a difference this made in being able to understand your kids and educating them. In marriage, wow, I don't think I would have survived 26 years without beginning to understand this in communication. In coaching individuals, in speaking and teaching. In fact, I have found it so significant that when I do seminars, like the God, Money, and Me seminars, I actually have the test, the BTSA, as part of it. Because I have found that awareness, just simple awareness of where they are spending their time and how that lines up with their innate gifting, and making sure that at least 51% changes everything. We all have to do things just to get through life. It's not like you can have the ideal world. You can try to get as much in that, but there's things we have to do it. But I've learned from you to sandwich those things. And what a difference. How I see the procrastination lift, how I see the joy come back, the passion, the fun, just by having the awareness of who did God make me to be? What is my innate gifting? And how do I structure my days to reflect that?
Sometimes people say to me, well, do I have to do the assessment? I don't like tests. And
Yeah.
I go, this is really not a test.
Yeah.
This is an assessment. The thing about the assessment is that I believe it'll jumpstart a person identifying who they are innately by 6 to 9 months. Now, you don't have to take the assessment.
Mm-hmm.
If a person wants to really dig into the research and really start learning about the brain and increase their awareness so that when they do an activity, they can sort of put that on a scale. How much did this drain my energy? How do I feel? Could I keep doing this?
Mm-hmm.
If they get really good at that, you can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But for most people, they already come to me exhausted, and they don't have the
And they're not
energy
that
to
aware,
do that, and they're
and-
not that
uh-huh.
aware.
Mhm.
So I like that particular assessment because it scores for adaption, meaning it'll give you some sense of, oh, you built your skills in the frontal left, ouch. That's not where your energy advantage is.
Right.
And it usually, as I said, totally aligns with where they are in life in terms of health and happiness and longevity and everything else.
Yeah. You know, I find one of the things that is very confusing for people is that your innate gifting and what you've developed talent, even mastery in, you may be considered an absolute expert in something. You may be able to do something very, very well, while at the same time frying your brain. These two are not one and the same.
They are
And there's some people that have actually developed, we were having this conversation right before we walked in, they've developed mastery. Like when you look at the brain, the ideal with your brain lead or innate gifting, it'll look like a kite going in the direction of your gifting. You will see some people that this comes out looking like a square. And these are people that can operate actually very well, with great talent in all four areas, and feel proud about it, how they are whole-brained, as they'll say, and think it's a good thing that they can just flow. We were having this conversation today.
And they're
but that
usually
is
quite young.
not a good thing. Yeah, not a good thing to have that square. Talk about that.
Well, when you do the BTSA, you do come out with some patterns that help people understand about the brain. The thing is, if you've got a squarish pattern, and we believe that you only have really innate giftedness in one chunk, my goodness, that means that 75% of your life is not matching that energy advantage. So we want to be able to use all of the chunks. The key is the percentage of time that you're using each. So many people have said to me, oh, look it, I'm a whole brain. I got a square pattern. And I'll say to them, talk to me about your childhood. And it will usually come out that people in the family had different leads from theirs, and you know, we only know our own brain. So if you birth a child who's very different from the parents' brains, both parents think that the child has to be like them for them to be okay, unless they really understand this.
That's huge.
And so they help encourage the child, and they don't mean to be doing anything unhelpful, but they're trying to encourage the child to be good at this, be good at that, be good at this. And so the child is struggling to develop these competencies. I wouldn't call it mastery, because I believe true talented mastery comes when you are really aligned with your giftedness, but they learn to do it very well.
Perceived mastery.
Perceived mastery.
Yes, yeah.
Good term. And so people say, oh, you're really good at this. Here, you can do that. All right, they've developed a certain number of skills, but they're not doing it energy efficiently.
Right.
And that's the difference between having learned to do it well, perceived mastery by others, and really doing it aligned with your giftedness, where you just flow, and it's almost like you cannot get it wrong.
And as you mentioned, you know, as you're getting older and older, you may be able to pull that off younger.
For a while.
And I know I did. In my 20s and 30s, I could pull that off. But as I went through other decades, I won't mention how many, you know, what I find is you're more and more exhausted. And I, like you, I have found my passion and my lead. And man, when I'm doing that, it's just like is mentioned in Chariots of Fire, you feel God's pleasure, you know, when you run. It is just that wind underneath your wings. And that is so amazing. The other thing I find amazing has to do with relationships. Now, and this is an interesting thing, I've asked you many times different questions, because I have found people that are so easy, it requires no energy to be together. I could be together 24 hours and it literally is the same feeling. The wind underneath your wings, no energy. And others that is energy exhausting to be with. Well, I have found that once we take the test, very often it's almost a very, very similar pattern. And yet, that may or may not be a good life partner or something to have the same energy advantage. So if you are, someone's got to do the areas of weakness that you both have, and not have one of them, for example, the male expect the female to fill in those other areas. So this is, you know, it's such a fascinating thing that can go into every area: relationships, friendships, business, creating a whole brain. If you're running a company, if you're running a business, the efficiency that will happen by having a whole brain represented, those with energy efficiency, innate gifting in each of the 4 quadrants will make your business absolutely have wind underneath its wings as well. Because we'll tend to like and attract the people like us because they're easy and they're fun and they're natural.
You speak the same
so
language.
you speak the same language, you know, and so you end up with a whole office, say, of frontal rights or something, all, and boy, you know, creativity is no end, but no one's holding up the details and putting in place the systems, and so, you know, the audience can't even keep up, the customers or the clients, because you're ever evolving, ever changing, and nothing stays the same, and creates chaos and confusion. So this is important, whether you're structuring your family or your relationships or your business, your finances. Now I want to talk about finances because it's also
okay. I want to make 2 comments.
Go. Good.
Remember the same brain lead for friends and
Yes.
partners.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment that just because you have an innate giftedness, you still have to hone the skills.
Mm-hmm.
The innate giftedness doesn't automatically
Sure.
give you the skills.
Sure.
So you've got to work
Yes.
as hard as anybody else
Yep.
honing skills.
It's just fun doing the work, honing the
It's
skills
just
for me.
that it takes less energy.
Yeah.
Now, as far as partnering, unless one brain is evil or really damaged in some way, I don't think there is a right or wrong partnering.
Okay.
What I do believe is that there is a difference in the amount of energy it will take you to sustain the relationship.
That's amazing.
So if you are
How
partnered...
come they don't teach you this, like, in high school?
Well,
You
we
know, the
could
relevant
sit here
things,
and
you
wish
know?
the whole morning. But I think it's about energy. So the amount of energy it will take you to sustain the relationship as we all start to lose energy has a great deal to do with how you're going to sustain this relationship
So
over
relationship
lifetime.
depleting your energy as you're trying.
Because it's, you know, very different languages. You know, unless you partner with someone in your own brain lead, it's like speaking 2 different languages. Well, come on, we can become bilingual. That's not a problem, but you need to understand that. So this is what we say. When you're looking at a frontal left, their energy advantage is up here behind the left eye. They usually partner with a basal right. The energy is here behind your right cheek, which is an opposite. And they usually work very well together because the things that those 2 parts do really clearly complement each other. And that's regardless of gender. This is the problem. You have a male frontal left partnered with a female basal right, and everybody goes, isn't that wonderful? He's got someone to take care of the entertaining and the kids and, you know, help him with marketing and whatever, and he's out there, the hard driving, you know, make the money, inductive, deductive reasoning. They can get along very well.
What happens if that's reversed?
What happens when that's
The
reversed?
female frontal left.
And it doesn't matter by
Yeah.
gender because it's the brain lead
Yeah.
pieces.
Yeah.
Society looks at this and they'll say, wow, she sure wears the pants in that family. And he may be the salt of the earth, so totally comfortable supporting her, like many women are totally comfortable supporting their spouse, that they may break up. And that's awful.
Yeah.
That society doesn't get it.
Yeah.
So often we will see opposites partnered, basal left, frontal right, because it's like they're bringing to the table different sets of giftednesses that cover all the bases. Now, having said that, we think that a female with the lead in the frontal right is probably the most different of anybody else.
That's me.
That's you. And one of those characteristics is, you know, characteristics of the frontal right is there's no language up there.
Pictures.
There's pictures, there's looking from here to there. If I want to get there and I'm here, what do I do to get there? It is context. What do I do in this context? Usually a sense of humor, all kinds of things, but there's no language. So then they often partner with a basal left, which is all about language. Writing, listening, decoding speech sounds, all that kind of thing. So they're complementing each other. But the frontal right female has a characteristic that seems to be a little different from the rest of the population. And that is the frontal right female does not want to be told what to do. Give me a suggestion, don't tell me what to do. And so if you're
Yeah.
partnered with somebody like that,
I
you've
know
got
that one.
the same emphasis, you're speaking the same language. And it can be a wonderful combination for being really good friends as well as partners, because you're absolutely right. We probably get our best friends from the brain lead commonality more than the other brain
Wow.
function pieces. But here's the deal. In many cultures, ours included, females are supposed to do whatever the male doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
And if she is socialized to comply,
Yeah.
she'll pick up all that basal left stuff,
is huge.
which is going to be the most energy intensive task she can do. And over time, she's going to go, I picked the wrong person. I'm out of here. I can't sustain this. And it's because she's doing too much of that. So people will ask, well, how come that's her most energy intensive mode? Well, because we don't think there are diagonal connectors in the brain. We think they're vertical and horizontal.
Wow.
So if you have a frontal right brain lead and you want to get down here and do all the routine, homemaking, housekeeping, balancing the checkbook,
yeah.
shopping,
Yeah.
all of that stuff,
Yeah.
you can't get there.
There's no direct route.
There's no direct route.
connection.
So here's your brain with the bridges. So you're going to cross the bridge here and go downstairs to get there, or you're going to go downstairs and cross the bridge here. Twice as far to get there.
So is that even more energy now?
It's
having to
still
go
only
twice?
$100 per second once you get here, but
But
it's
getting
twice
there.
as far,
Yeah.
twice the glucose just to get
Wow.
there.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
that's the deal, we think,
Amazing.
with that.
Amazing. Well, we are talking to a lot of business professionals, a lot of entrepreneurs, and so I want to bring it home, talking both at home, but also in the business world about finances, money, bottom line. So let's talk about the brain and money. Is there a relationship? Have you found a correlation in that area?
Well, let's put it this way. Anything I've ever studied, I think you can find a correlation. So let me begin by just giving you my website address where you can go and get lots of information that we will not have time to talk about. You know, my goal is to make my website the most user-friendly, complete collection of practical brain function information on the planet. I said that the other day and somebody went, yeah, right. And I said, well, I may not achieve that goal. I'm going to get farther if I aim higher. So you can go to my website, which is just my name, www.arlenetaylor.org. I tell people, if you're looking for me, forget .com, forget .net, forget .tv, I'm an org. So you go to arlenetaylor.org. You'll find a whole menu on the home page. Click on Practical Applications. Now you come up to another whole menu. If you click on Brain Lead, that's where you'll find lots of topics where I've done my best to give you examples of how individuals would approach that topic based on their brain lead. And one of those is money management. So yes, I think innately the way you would approach managing money would have a great deal to do with your brain lead. It would also be impacted by whether you're extroverted, ambiverted, or introverted. But the place I start is, all right, first of all, what is your innate brain lead? Because I'll ask them, what was money about in your family? Because we get socialized. The brain wants rewards. There's nothing wrong with that. The brain was designed to feel good. It was designed to get rewards. The problem is we often get rewards in a way that give us very negative outcomes, which is about all addictions. But secondly, if in your family you had to do something in a certain way to get rewards, and it didn't align with who you are, you may have learned to do that very well and think that is who you are. So I want to know first, what role did money play in your family, and how were you taught to deal with it? And then I want to figure out their innate brain lead and see if we've got a match or if we're passing in the night. Because it can have huge implications for how we manage money. So huge, in fact, that in a religious community, especially if they have skimmed over the surface of beliefs and attitudes and rhetoric, and maybe have a misconception. You know, the biggest one I hear is something like this. You know, my family was really poor. We never had enough money. We struggled. Sometimes we didn't even have enough to eat. And I've been relatively successful, and I can take care of my family, but I feel guilty about that because money is the root of all evil. And I'll go, oops, I don't think so.
Yeah, go back and read that one again.
Go back and study that one again.
Yeah.
The love of money in an unbalanced way may be the root of all evil. And now you look at our world and who's in jail because of Ponzi schemes and so on.
Yes.
It's not money. I believe we were designed to be healthful, prosperous, and thrive. And that includes money.
Yes.
But now we get this all warped, and we often lose our innate giftedness in the miasma of the family system.
Absolutely. And you know, my passion and my signature, I always sign anything I write, praying you prosper in all things, because I believe God wants us to prosper physically, financially, relationally. In fact, you can go to www.prosperinallthings.com. prosperinallthings.com. We have whole seminars that equip you dealing with these areas, the 3-in-1 approach, where we look at how you are wired in your brain, how your brain wired, your innate gifting, your innate energy efficiency. We look at how you're spiritually wired, and you are spiritually wired, and concrete action plans. How can you put this all together to truly prosper in every area of your life? So prosper in all things. We just spent 12 weeks looking at the biblical side of things related to money. Do you know there are more mentions about money than any other thing in the scriptures, and they are not negative, as you would think. More than talking about faith or prayer or anything else. And I truly believe what the scripture that says, "Beloved, I pray you prosper in all things and be in health, even as your soul prospers." Now, how interesting that we prosper above all, we prosper in all things, be in health. Without health, you can't prosper in anything. Be in health as your soul. Well, that definition biblically means mind, will, and emotions. So as goeth the mind, and being healthy in what we're talking about, so goes the prosperity. So we are talking not just theoretical, but we're talking about having a business that works for you, that works for your clients and your customers. We're talking about having finances work. We're talking about health. We're talking about relationships. There is no area that is not addressed by this. And I have seen this so much. You know, I can start a conversation when you're talking about what went on around the family. And so much of it, you know, when you're talking about the brain and the unconscious part, before we even get to the thinking part over here that you just addressed, what is buried right here, what decisions, I believe a whole lot of the financial decisions that we made were unconscious, and they were around 8 years old. I know I had to go through that. I had to experience it. I had no idea how much hold. Because for me, I saw many things. I lived in absolute extravagance. I lived in a gated community within a gated community. I had indoor swimming pools, waterfalls, slides.
Well, I sure did.
Horseback riding. Well, this is interesting in a lot of things because I had it all that way. But I also had extreme dysfunction. So it was not uncommon for me to see a Christmas tree going through a window, or an ashtray going through a fish tank, or dishes all over the floor, and all of that, axes going through jaguars, total craziness.
Which is usually reactive behaviors coming out of the subconscious.
Yeah. And so the combination of that, and the combination that then my dad had a heart attack before he was 30 and wasn't expected to live past 30. So then we moved to the country, but now my dad had to fly to Los Angeles to his multi-million-dollar corporations, was gone all week, and then came back. So a couple things happened. Money took my daddy away. Money means dysfunction. So now you've got this 8-year-old mindset that says, I don't want any of that stuff. Now you get misinterpreted scripture like what you just heard, that the money is the root of all evil, that somehow poverty is a virtue, that it's harder for a rich man to get to heaven than a camel to go through the. I mean, you've all heard them all. And as a brand new believer in high school, I said, absolutely, sign me up. I don't want any. Well, the conflict that then, I literally see gas and brakes going on at the same time when you've got this going on.
It's a rough ride.
So you deal a lot with this. You deal with scripting, and it's something that we deal in the seminar with, scripting, family of origin. Talk a little bit about that in finances.
Well, my brain's opinion is if you don't know where you've come from, you're going to have a hard time knowing where to go in the future. Because we tend to do one of two things. We either do exactly the way we were done to, or we do 180 degrees opposite because we want to do it differently. And Brenda just captured that beautifully. Go from wealth to I don't want any because it's dysfunctional. My brain's opinion is 180 degrees from dysfunctional, still dysfunctional.
That's amazing.
So that's not where you want to go.
That's amazing.
You want to go the healthy way for your brain. So I believe family of origin work is critical. You need to know where you have come from. And that's not just this generation. That's what can you learn about your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, if possible. I mean, did they come from another country to America because they were desperate for food? You know, my maternal grandfather left Ireland in the potato famine, which was probably artificially created, we now find out. But he came there because they were starving. All right, that made a difference about how he dealt with money. So you need to know where you came from so that you can decide, do you want to continue on that path? Do you want to do 180 degrees difference, which is going to take you back on another road, but not necessarily a functional one? Or do you want to craft a map for you to follow for the rest of your life? I have a whole mini monograph on this because it's so key, in my brain's opinion. So if you go to my website and you click on articles, monographs on the main menu, and then you'll click on monographs on the next menu, and there's a whole big section on family of origin work, because that's critically important. Secondly, scripts. Your script. Every one of us is handed a script at birth, sometimes beforehand. That script contains, and you mentioned that by the age of 8, you pretty well had this stuff set. Well, let me tell you, many researchers suggest that by the age of 5, you have subconsciously already absorbed the script that your family has written for you. Now, this is not about blame.
Right.
None of this is about blame.
Awareness.
I believe my parents did the best they could for me with what they knew. A lot of it should never happen. I'm very clear about that. But it is not about blame.
Right.
So they do their best to hand us a script. And sometimes it's written. You know, they'll write you letters and tell you what you have to do. But much of the time it's not written. It's just subconsciously absorbed. And now here is the key. Does that script match you, or does that script match something that is not about you? And that's huge, because many times we're following this script, doing our very best, knocking ourselves out. It doesn't match who we are, we're failing. So now we develop low self-worth issues. We just don't know where to go and how to do it. So I have a mini monograph on scripts. Figure out what you were given. Figure out who you are. Do they align? And here's what I've had to do. As I've pondered the script I was handed, some of it worked. Some of it was very good. For example, my mother was the first female in our entire maternal line, as far back as we can go, and that's multiple generations, that ever went to college. Males went to college, not females. My mother wanted to go to college. She did when she was over 50, graduated magna cum laude at Syracuse University. she had already written in my script that I would graduate from college. So there were some good pieces. There were other pieces that had nothing to do with me. So I have had to, it's just look at, you've got a movie script in front of you. Your life is the movie. And you're reading the script. Okay, this is good. No, that has nothing to do with me. That was my grandmother. That was my aunt. That was my cousin. So you cut that piece out of your script. And I had to write some whole new pieces.
Yeah.
And as I write the pieces, aligned with who I am, I cannot tell you how that feels.
Yes.
I am becoming the person I was intended to be.
Yes. Freedom. Really. Absolutely.
marvelous.
Just, it is absolutely amazing. The way that we are designed and living out that design. You know, Scripture says that we are God's masterpiece. And when you look at the original language, it's poema, poetry. We are God's poetry, and you are God's poetry. You have a design for a reason. You have a bent, if you will, a healthy bent as to how you were created to accomplish what you were created to do. And that is in your mind, that is spiritually, and that is with your call and your purpose and just your unique divine design. That's why I paired together three things that normally do not get put together in a seminar: God, money, and me. And I call it the combination that brings prosperity. And you can find more about that on prosperinallthings.com. There'll also be links to Dr. Arlene Taylor's work there at prosperinallthings.com, so you can find it easily. Because I think this is one of the most significant things, is as individuals discover who they are, whose they are, and the purpose they're on the planet. The freedom, the joy, the contribution, the legacy. See, the common client that I work with, that comes to my seminars, that I coach, that reads my work and things like that, they typically have found that they have reached a level of success, but they've been absolutely just running against the wind.
And they can't go beyond
No,
that.
they've just been running against the wind. And when these pieces, and it's awareness, when these pieces get put in place, when the awareness is there, it translates so that literally the wind is underneath their wings, and they feel there's just no end to where they feel like they can fly. And this is one of the greatest joys for me to watch, the transformation that occurs in the individual, in the relationships, in the businesses. It's so relevant, so practical.
So let me make one more comment, because as I travel around the world and present this information, I speak to a whole constellation of different types of brains and cultures. And when I have to be translated, I'm always wondering a little bit if I'm using words that are even in their language.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I often have people come up to me and say, I'm not a religious person. I don't want to affiliate with the church.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with this? And I go, I have no agenda for you.
Yeah.
Because with what we think we know about brain function, nobody's ever found a religious center in the brain. We also believe that whatever else we are spiritual, sexual, and relational. So when you take a look at spirituality in the brain, and there's some wonderful research that has come out on this recently, every brain is spiritual. You decide what you want to do with that spirituality, because it involves a sense of awe, a sense of
that's a good word.
Often connecting with something that seems outside of yourself.
Bigger than yourself.
It has nothing to do with affiliating with a specific religion.
Absolutely.
Or even with a religion. So people need to be really clear about that.
Sure.
Now, many people affiliate with religion and believe it helps them hone their spirituality. But this is not about saying, you need to go find a church and sign up with it. It is about, we believe the brain is spiritual. Figure out how that works for you. Because if you turn off all your ability to experience a sense of awe, we believe you'll turn off other faculties of the brain as well, and that would be too bad.
It's literally shutting down a part of yourself.
Shutting
isn't
down
it?
a part.
Mm-hmm.
And this we often see, for example, our culture says tears are not okay, especially if you're male. They're not even okay if you're female in the office. Well, it appears that this frontal right lobe is the gesturing part of the brain in general, and tears are a gesture of deep emotion. So a man will come to me and we'll start talking about this, and I'll see him start to tear up, and I'll go, how easily do you tear up? And he'll go, I never tear up, I haven't shed a tear in 30 years. And I'll go, if you let yourself, would you? And he goes, yeah, probably, but boy, I was spanked for tearing up as a child.
I'll give you something to cry about, right?
So, picture
Yeah.
this. You have a ripe plum in your hand. You put your other thumb on it and you press out, all tearing up. You're going to get areas of stress,
Wow.
not just under your thumb, but all around the area of
Good
pressure.
metaphor.
So I'm not telling men go out and sob in public. I am telling you, if you would tear up easily if you let yourself. Or women, that's a clue that maybe your giftedness is in the frontal right, and society has taken that away from you by saying, you're not a man, you're not okay if you tear up. So this has implications across every culture, every age group, gender, you name it.
You know, interestingly, I'll find that connection, of course, being frontal right, but I'll find that connection spiritually. When I am really having a spiritual experience, the tears will just flow. So that's an interesting thing. I just believe we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And so to cut that off is literally to cut off, like cutting off your right arm or your left arm.
And the Olympics, I love to watch them every 2 years. I don't always get to watch a lot. But watching,
Yeah.
I just get goosebumps.
The awe.
Watching a brain excel
Yeah.
in its area of giftedness. And if you've watched the Olympics, you've even heard the announcer say, this person started out doing such and such and, gained some success. And then a coach said, I think you'd be good at that. Why don't you try that? And they go to the Olympics and get 5 gold medals. Oh, I just get goosebumps. That is aligning your developed skills with who you are, and the sense of awe at watching a brain function at that level. Believe me, I can tear up in a nanosecond.
It's amazing. I know what it is. Some of you listening, I know what it is to be exhausted, fatigued, stuck, running against the wind, working hard, and not getting a breakthrough. I know what that feels like. And I know what it feels like to get this awareness, to begin to apply it, and to see the practical changes. Now, those that know me know I am both very spiritual, very theoretical, but also very bottom line practical. I have started and run multi-million-dollar companies, and I am about results. I am about, getting it done in your area of expertise. So let's just wrap it up. Just speak to the professionals and the entrepreneurs and the business people in the audience and just talk to them about this. How this produces just bottom line results, how this can help them.
First of all, this is not a Pollyanna solution. That doesn't mean that if you figure out who you are, align yourself with that you will have no problems in your life whatsoever. But in my experience, researchers clearly believe that, about 50% of our problems are of our own making based on the way we think and what we believe. So if you get that aligned, just picture you've dumped 50% of the turnips off the back of your truck. So your load seems really light. So this doesn't mean you'll have a problem-free, flawless life. This is what I believe it means. That when a problem occurs, you have a way to deal with that in a method, in a style that works well for your brain. And if we go back clear to writings supposedly by Epictetus, who is a 2nd century Greek philosopher, he said, and I don't know how people figure this out when we didn't even have brain imaging equipment.
Amazing.
He said, it's not so much what happens to you that matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you think about
Yes.
what happens to you that matters. So we've sort of turned that into something I call the 20-80 rule. And that means that 20% of any negative effect to your brain and body from an unfortunate, unexpected, undesired, awful event is from the event itself. 80% is what you think about it. It's how you implement your support system. It's how you implement your strategies. It's how clear you are about who you are and what works for you. All of us can do the 20-80 rule. And in my life, the older I get, the better it gets. If I could have known this when I was 15,
Wow.
my life would have been much less problematic.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm glad I'm getting it now.
Yeah.
And that's what we wish for you.
Later is better than not at all. I really want to thank you for sharing
My
of your
pleasure.
wisdom and expertise. I know how much it's blessed me and affected me personally. And I just want to talk to all of you what this can mean for you. And just really close with the scripture that I opened with that says, "Beloved." And I just believe you are so loved. You are so created by design. I pray, and I believe that's God speaking, but myself speaking, I pray that you prosper. Above all, it says, above everything else, that you prosper in all things. Physically, financially, relationally, spiritually. I pray you prosper in all things as your soul, as your mind, your brain, your will, your emotions prosper. As you begin to grow in awareness, as you begin to learn, as you begin to discover, as you begin to apply these things, it results in prosperity. It results in joy, a fun and wild ride. I am loving it. I am loving the adventure of life, and I know you will too. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing all of this.
And since I'm older,
Yes.
I get the last word.
Go.
Which is, it doesn't matter how much information you get unless you choose to do something about it. So I hope that you'll take even one thing that we've talked about and practically apply it in your life, because we can't do it for you. You're the only one who can.